tonight we're going to go into the mitzvah of Pesach night. Let's see if I turn this on. Okay, so we have the mitzvah of the Haggadah of Pesach, and it's very important to prepare before we get into the actual Seder night. We know that we prepare for a lot of mitzvahs sometimes, and Pesach and specifically we prepare with the matzahs, and we prepare that we should clean our house. We prepare very good. Everything should be clean, and there shouldn't be any chametz around. So we also look into a lot of baking of matzahs, and the matzahs should be perfect. And we buy the mar. There's a lot of preparing done. But on the other hand, Rabbi Friedlander, he speaks out that we also have to prepare for the actual Seder itself. That the person has to know what he's going to be doing. What is the Seder? What does the word Seder mean? And what exactly is he going to be doing? This is a mitzvah of the night. There is a mitzvah besides for all the other mitzvahs. There's a mitzvah of matzah, there's a mitzvah of maror, but there's also a mitzvah of v'yigata levincha that you have to tell over the story of Mitzrayim. And therefore a person has to be prepared for that mitzvah also. That's no less than the other mitzvahs. So therefore he comes out, the person has to know exactly what he's going to be doing on Pesach night. Some people, they do prepare, but they prepare the wrong way. Because if you don't know what the mitzvah is, then you just think, well, I have to get a lot of vertluch, what they say, a lot of nice, interesting insights into the Haggadah, and they try to work it like that. They see what the what the beginning of the Haggadah speaks about, and they say, what does it mean, this word or this girsa? There's certain texts, like it says, hal lach ma'anya. So there's a different text that says keha, that says with a chaf. So you could go into it for a half hour. You could give an insight of why is there a chaf here? Should there be a chaf? Or there was a story of the Talmidim of Rebbe Akiva, and they were in Bnei Brak, and there's a whole slew of questions there. Why were they in Bnei Brak? Why does the Haggadah have to tell us that they were in Bnei Brak? But you have to know what to focus on, because that could be, certain things are just nice insights, but that's not part of the mitzvah of the Seder night. The mitzvah of the Seder night is to tell over the story of how we left Mitzrayim. And although it's good to understand what you're saying, that is limud Torah, that is learning Torah. Learning Torah to learn anything, to learn any part of the Chumash and any part of the Haggadah, that is learning. You do get a mitzvah of learning Torah, but on this night we have a special mitzvah, a special obligation, and that is to actually try to experience that we're leaving Mitzrayim and to go through all the motions. And the only way to do that is to know what your goal is. And if you know what your goal is, then you won't get caught up in these different things. Sometimes you see the kids nowadays, kids are very, they have the excellent yeshivas, excellent schools, and they come back with pages and pages. So they're telling the father like all these different explanations. So on the one hand, it's good that the kids should be coming home and learning with the father and everything. But on the other hand, you have to make sure that maybe you'll let them say a little bit, but you have to make sure that the main idea of the day has to also come through, and the whole idea of having them experience Yetzias Mitzrayim and asking them the questions. Nowadays, we don't ask them questions. They don't ask us. They're sort of telling us they've shut them already. It's not v'yigata levincha. Usually, the pasuk says v'yigata levincha v'yamahu. You're supposed to tell your son about the whole Yetzias Mitzrayim. Nowadays, it's v'yigata levicha. Nowadays, the son comes home and tells the father all the different insights that he saw and he learned in school. But it has to be, a person has to prepare before, and then he'll know exactly how to lead the Seder and how to experience what he has to on that night. Now, this idea of preparing is very, very important, and it's worth it to go off for a minute. And this is the idea of preparing before you ever start any mitzvah is very, very, very important. I didn't get a chance to copy, but I'll read to you what the Mesilas Yesharim speaks about preparing before any mitzvah. Mesilas Yesharim says that in order to become tahar, to be clean and do all mitzvahs with purity, you want to do mitzvahs pure, a person has to think before he does any mitzvah. And he has to think three things, or two. He says, you have to think right before you do a mitzvah, you shouldn't jump into a mitzvah. It's not good to jump into a mitzvah, to jump into a mincha. It's not good, even though sometimes you're running and you're late. But the problem is that when you come in, your mind is not settled. And therefore, you cannot have the right kavanah, you cannot have the right intention. And therefore, you have to think for a little bit. First of all, what are you doing? And you have to think and prepare yourself a little bit until you're able to have the peace of mind and to understand what you're doing. And he says you have to think two things. Mahu haylech lases, what you're going to do, velifnei mi hu haylech lases. You have to think these two things. You have to think, what are you doing, and before who am I doing this? And if a person thinks these two things, then he's in good shape. Because part of the problem with a lot of the problem with the mitzvahs that people do is if we don't realize that we're standing in front of Hashem, and every mitzvah is in front of Hashem, and it shouldn't be independent mitzvahs. It should all be with Hashem in front of us. They say that even the empty ones of the Jews, the empty Jews, they're still filled up with mitzvahs like a rimain, like a pomegranate. So the question is, what does that mean? If the empty ones, even the empty ones of the Jews, are filled up with mitzvahs like a rimain, like a pomegranate, so then they're not too bad. They're not too bad off. So they say that you're right. Everyone has mitzvahs. There's a lot of mitzvahs, and everyone's doing mitzvahs. Everyone's buying tefillin, and everyone has an esrog for Sukkot. But the question is it with Hashem? Is there Hashem with the esrog? You're thinking that Hashem is there, and you're doing His mitzvah right now that He said to shake the lulav, or He said to eat the matzah. The person has to keep Hashem in his mind throughout the day. That's the idea of emunah. It has to be the mitzvah with Hashem. And they say that the pomegranate has the seeds all together, but they're not attached. They're like all over. They're like all over the pomegranate. They're not held together like an apple. The seeds are held in the middle by the core of the apple. But a pomegranate, it's all over. So they say the empty people of the Jews, they do mitzvahs. They're full with mitzvahs like a rimon, like a pomegranate. But on the other hand, although they're full like a pomegranate, but the seeds are all over. They're scattered. There's a mitzvah. He did a mitzvah here. He did a mitzvah there. But there's nothing connecting all the mitzvahs. It has to be Hashem as the core, as Hashem holding them together. That every mitzvah you do, you see Hashem there together with you. So that's a good idea to think about. And that's what the Mesilas Yesharim says. Before you ever do a mitzvah, think these two things. Mahu haylech lases. What am I going to do? Velifnei mi hu haylech lases. And before who am I doing it? And that will help get a person with the right train of mind, and then he could do it the right way. And he says that everyone knows that they say the Hasidim Rishonim, the pious ones, back in the olden days, they used to come an hour early to davening. They used to come an hour before davening started. So the Mesilas Yesharim asked, what did they do for an hour? What did they do for an hour before davening? So he says that they would sit and they would contemplate and think about exactly what they're going to do. They would think about it. They didn't just come an hour early and sit down and just space out for an hour. He says this point, that they came there and they thought about what their goal is and what they're going to do, and they purified their hearts, that they're right now going to do service in front of Hashem. And when you do that, then you're focused. And when you're focused, you're able to push away any thoughts that will come to you, or any distractions, because you're focused. If you just jump in, then you're not focused, so things could just jump right in and distract you. So therefore he says that's what they did when they would come early. And therefore, the way to do all the mitzvahs with purity, it should be a pure mitzvah, is only if a person does it with a little bit of his baininus, a little bit of foresight and forethought before he starts doing the mitzvahs. So that's the first thing which is relevant to us we're doing mitzvahs the whole day, and we're going to be doing the Seder. We're going to do, I think there are 15 mitzvahs. Maybe if you include the brachas, I think they say there are 15 mitzvahs by the Seder. So first has to be prepared to know what he's doing and to have it in mind. The truth is, a lot of times we do mitzvahs during the day, and we don't even realize that we're doing mitzvahs, or we don't even think about it. For example, when you go in a car or a taxi, when a person goes in a taxi, and he gets out and he pays the taxi, that's a mitzvah. The mitzvah is b'yoymai titein schoroi. It says b'yoymai, in that day when you finish the job, titein schoroi, you have to pay him, and that's a mitzvah from the Torah to pay with the day that you make up that you're going to finish. You have to pay him. It works with all types of a babysitter. It works with any employee that you have. You have to pay him the day when you make up. And if you don't, you miss out on this mitzvah of b'yoymai titein schoroi.
So if somebody gets paid by the week and you pay him at the end of the week?
So you have to pay him on that day, the end of the week, because that's the mitzvah. What?
So it's not always it depends on the agreement. It
depends on the agreement. Whatever the agreement is, that day you have to make sure to pay them now. And that's what people, there was one great tzaddik, and he was counting out his money carefully in the taxi, and he wanted to make sure that that he had the exact right amount to pay the taxi driver. So the taxi driver was getting impatient to this tzaddik. So he said, "Just give me the money raise." He said, "No, I have to make sure that I'm doing the mitzvah right. I want to pay you the full amount, because it's a mitzvah of b'yoymai titein schoroi." And then he added, mitzvahs also should be done with simcha, with happiness, and they shouldn't be rushed. It shouldn't be just give it to him and then run out. It should be done with the right thought and the right attitude. Yeah.
Well, you say you shouldn't run out, but you can't keep somebody waiting because you want to go and do the mitzvah the right way.
That's true. Right. So he wasn't doing it unnecessarily. The person, his name was Rabbi Moshe Aaron Stern. So he was doing it, he was counting out the money carefully to make sure that he gave him the exact amount. Mm-hmm. And he didn't want to rush it. You're right, you can't keep him unnecessarily, but it shouldn't be done rushed, and it should be done with the thought before you do it. You should at least think that you're doing this. And a lot of times a person needs to put the thought into it. There's a halacha that is very relevant, that when a person is doing a mitzvah or is davening, he shouldn't be doing anything else while he's doing that mitzvah. When a person is benching, he shouldn't be doing any action while he's benching, because it's a problem. It's called that you're doing b'mikra. It's like a person is going b'mikra without any thought. He happens to be doing a mitzvah. He just happened upon a mitzvah. So the Mishnah Berurah brings down that it's not good to do that. The person should make sure he's not doing anything when he's doing the mitzvah. And the same thing is by benching or davening. The person shouldn't be doing any actions. And they learn out from there. He shouldn't even be learning. It happens to be impossible to learn and daven at the same time. But they bring down over here, if a person is learning while he's davening, so then that's a problem of don't go with me b'mikra. The pasuk says by the curses in the end of the Chukaisai. Im telchu imi bekeri, says if you go with me bekeri, like just happenstance, you just happen to be doing a mitzvah, but you don't even you're not even paying attention to it, then Hashem says I will go with you also bekeri, and Hashem says He will give the punishments down. So therefore, a person has to be careful by mitzvahs and by davening and by all types of things. Mitzvahs also, not to be doing anything else while you're doing the mitzvah, because that will show that we're just doing it perfunctionary without even the proper thought. So each mitzvah needs to have hachana. You have to do hachana. You have to prepare before any mitzvah and think about it. Besides for the Mesilas Yesharim, ma'u elech la'aseh, what are you doing in front of who you're doing? And sometimes you have to even think deeper into it. Some things are a mitzvah, you don't even realize it. So that's good to keep in mind. Now, it comes up also in the house a lot of times. A person has to remember that that's also a mitzvah a lot of times, to help out in the house. People think helping in chesed is in the street, when you're going out to help someone outside, but in the house is the first place where a person has to help. There is a very interesting piece from Reb Chaim Vital. Reb Chaim Vital was one of the great Kabbalistic masters. He was, I think, a Talmud of the Arizal. And he wrote an interesting thing here. he says when a person comes up to Shemayim, so what are they going to ask him? What's the first thing they're going to ask him? So he says there are a few things they're going to ask him, but they're going to look at his midos, at his character traits. So he says, how do they measure his character traits? So he says he's nimdad. They measure it only how he was to his wife and his family. He says even if he's, let's say he might have a gemach, he might have a fund and a charity fund, and he has to lend things. He could be doing a lot of good things with a lot of people. He could be lending and visiting sick and going to see how people are feeling in the hospital and being misameach, making happy a chassan and a kala. But he says when the day comes, he says the one thing that he's going to be measured with his chesed is they check how he is in the house. If he actually was kind to his wife, then good. But if not, if he was angry, so then without doing chesed, that it will tilt his din, he says, and it will turn it to the negative. So a person has to be very careful. People think that with the house, so house is already that's already part of my family. But there, Reb Chaim Vital is saying that chesed starts in the house, and a person has to be careful to be kind with the house. Now, Reb Shalom Shadron, Reb Shalom Shadron was the Maggid in Yerushalayim. There's a picture. He lived a few years ago, 20 years ago. So he was a famous Maggid. He was the one actually who they called the Maggid Speaks. The book from Pesach, the Maggid Speaks. He was the Maggid who actually was started off as looking up. He was looking up to him when he would come into America. He would always stay by them. So Reb Shalom, one time he had a child who was not feeling well. So he went to take that. He had a bunch of children. So he wanted to take this child and bring him to his parents' house, in order that this child shouldn't infect the other children, shouldn't make them get sick. So he wanted to bring this child to his parents' house. So he was walking with the child, and he met someone whose name was Reb Aizela Mecharif, a very great person. So he said, "Where are you going?" So Reb Shalom told him, "I'm going to bring my child to my parents because this child's sick. I don't want him to infect others." So he said, "Where are you going?" Again, he repeated the question. He said, in Hebrew, he said to him, like he didn't understand where he was going. So he said, his lesson was, "Lama, biglal ma."
Why?
Why? What's your purpose? Why are you bringing the child there? So Shalom thought, well, maybe he didn't hear me. He repeated himself. So he says, "But what was your purpose? Why are you doing that? Lama?" He said, "What I really mean to say," he explained to him, "is what's your ultimate purpose? It has to be that you're doing this to do chesed. You're doing this to do chesed with your other children, and you're doing this to help out." He says, an animal also wants to protect their young children, and an animal will also make sure that no one harms the young children, and the other young babies don't get infected. So Reb Shalom said to him, as he told Reb Shalom Shadron, "You're taking your child there. You have to have more of it. You have to have it in mind that you're actually doing a chesed. You're doing chesed with. It happens to be your children. That you want to help out your children. So you're taking one child to your parents. That's also called. That's also chesed. Chesed is not only when you go and help a guy who's lost. You give him something that he needs desperately. Chesed is also with the family." And he says there was also such a story. After that, Reb Shalom Shadron says whenever, for the next half a year, whenever he saw anyone from his family and he went to help them out, he always thought in his head, he said, "Okay, I'm going to go do chesed with my wife. I'm going to go do chesed with my children." And when he saw his wife coming with they used to draw water, so she had these 2 pitchers of water she was bringing back. He said, "I'm going to go do chesed with my wife now, with a lady. I'm going to do chesed with a Yiddish Freud." In Yiddish, that means a Jewish lady. "I'm going to go do chesed with a Jewish lady," and he helped her out. But in essence, she was his wife. So therefore, that was an idea that he picked up, that chesed is in all areas. It doesn't mean just outside the house. It's also all these types. And it could be whatever your job is. It could also be chesed. There was a story with the Chavetz Chaim, that the Chavetz Chaim one time went into the pharmacy, and the pharmacist there, he was a very, very wicked man. He denied Hashem, and he didn't do so many mitzvahs. He was like off the beaten path. So one time the Chavetz Chaim went in, and everyone was there. The pharmacy was full, and the Chavetz Chaim went over to him, and he gave him a big hug, and he told him, "I am so jealous of you. You here have the opportunity. You're helping people stay alive. You're actually saving lives. And when you save lives, you're actually you give people medicine when they're about to die here, and you're doing unbelievable work and unbelievable kindness, and therefore I'm envious of your job." So the man asked the Chavetz Chaim, he said, "Yeah, but I get paid. I get paid to do this. So why are you envious of me?" So the Chavetz Chaim said, "That's fine. You should be getting paid, and you're working hard for your services. But even still, even if you get paid, but when you get paid, that you should. That's for your services. But you still should have in mind that when you're doing this, you're doing a mitzvah. You're helping people stay alive, and you put in a little bit of this forethought, and it could be transformed into an action of chesed." So the Chavetz Chaim left the store, and the man started to he thought about it, and he started doing this little thought as he gave everyone their medicine. And after he thought a little bit more, he gave it to them with a smile. And slowly but surely he thought, well, that's one mitzvah I'm doing. I'm doing chesed. Maybe there's a lot of mitzvahs in the Torah. Maybe I'll try to do a little bit. What else? We have another mitzvah. Maybe keep it over him. And he stretched it and stretched it until the man came back to be a fully observant Jew. So that was the case where the Chavetz Chaim showed him that everyone's doing a job, but whatever their job is, in that job is a lot of chesed and a lot of ability to do chesed with people. There was actually a bus driver in Eretz Yisrael. He was an old man, and he wasn't so from. He was a little bit off. But one thing he did chesed. A whole day he was doing chesed. He would stop his bus and let people on a little past the bus stop if they were running for it, and he was already pulling away. He would stop if he saw them. And he told me that he's doing it because he wants to do chesed. He wants to help people out. And he's not able to, he says he doesn't learn, but at least he does chesed. And he tries to help out people. Which is, it was a very beautiful thing, because it's a rarity to have such a person, such a high way of doing chesed. Other bus drivers, the minute you pull away from the bus stop, that's it. Even if it's 2 more feet, they get the red light, they won't open the doors. But it depends what your mind frame is. If your mind frame is that I want to try to help someone out, then that transforms the whole mitzvah into chesed. And this is actually what they bring down, that there was a certain man who he said the following story. It was with Rabbi Yehuda Leib Chasman. And he said, let's say he tells you there's a certain Jew that you know, and he goes and he brings everyone, all the families of this neighborhood, he brings them milk every morning, so they should have fresh milk for the kids. So what would you say? It's a beautiful, beautiful person. He's doing great deeds. He says, let's say I tell you he's getting paid for it. So then what? So then people say, oh no, that's now he's a regular old person. He's just doing it to get paid. So Rabbi Yehuda Leib Chasman, he was one of the great Musar people. He said, no, it's not true. It doesn't transform that you're just a plain delivery milkman now. Rather, you are getting paid for your services, and you should get paid for your services. But if you have the right intention, then you could transform that into an act of kindness. And a person should try to put on these thoughts, try to think of these thoughts, and even if he doesn't fully believe them, if you keep on thinking about it, eventually you'll start to believe it, and then you'll have the right thoughts. And they actually bring this down in Yerushalayim, that Rabbi Moshe Aaron Stern one time was walking and he saw a person who was actually fixing the street. It was, they had these big, I don't know what you call them, to fix the whole sidewalk. So Rabbi Moshe Aaron said, it's such a shame. Here this man is fixing the street, he's doing a mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. He's actually settling the land of Eretz Yisrael. He's actually helping to buy a house is also part of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. And in certain cases, it's permitted to ask a guy to come help you sign it on Shabbos. Different.
To do what? Sorry.
There's a Mishnah Berurah speaks about sometimes it's mutter to ask a guy to help in certain cases procure a house, to get a house for Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. Well, we won't go into all the details, but Yishuv Eretz Yisrael is a mitzvah according to certain Rishonim, according to the Ramban. So Rav Moshe Aaron said that this person here, he's actually helping settle Eretz Yisrael. He's actually helping that the whole sidewalk should be, flat and straight, and therefore that's Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. But it's such a shame that he's not even putting in the proper thought into it before, and therefore he's losing out on the whole mitzvah. So therefore, a person should always think these thoughts, and he has to have hachana. He has to prepare before a person does any action. He always has to think, what is he doing? The Mesil Shalom says two things: Mahu oisa, v'lifnei mihu oisa. What am I going to do, and before who am I doing it? Before Hashem, and that will be the emunah. The emunah makes the action much greater. So now, going back to the Seder, so that's a good idea to keep in mind when we're going through the all of the ideas of the Seder. A person has to be prepared that what he's doing is not just going to go through the Seder. There's a whole Seder here, and there's a Haggadah, and there's a mitzvah of the night, and you have to be prepared for the mitzvah of the night. You have to know what you're trying to do, what's your goal. And then once you know what the mitzvah is, now you could try. You could try to do it when you're prepared. What is a Seder? A person has to know there's an order here. There's a Seder. Each of, there's Simanim. There are Kadesh, Orchatz, Karpas. And some people even say the Simanim. They before they start the Seder, they say, Kadesh, they sing the whole thing. And as they get up to each one, they also say, okay, Orchatz. Now the question is, why do they do that? Why do they even sing all of the Simanim, all of these signs, Kadesh, Orchatz? When they get to it, it's like a table of contents. Why is a table of contents? You never read through it before you read the book, usually, unless you're trying to skip to find the best chapter. You read it. Table of contents is used if you want to find something, so you go to that page. But here we go through the whole thing before we start the whole Haggadah. We say Kadesh, Orchatz. So they bring down that this is very important. Each siman is part of what the Baal Haggadah wrote. And it's actually a question, who wrote these simanim? It's a machlokes. It seems to be to dispute if Rashi wrote it or one of the Balei Tosfos wrote it. One of the people who wrote Tosfos, his name was I think Reb Yosef Pizel. But it's holy. Each of these things, Kaddish, when we say those words, Kaddish, Orchatz, Karpas, Yachatz, it wasn't just a table of contents that was made up by someone just putting it all together. It was written with precision and with kedusha. Every word in there is very holy, and a person has to, when he starts off his actual seder, we sing this in order to, you could say that it's to help us to prepare and to think of what we're going to do now, to think of every step along the way, prepare, and each word each siman is there for a reason. The fact that it's Kaddish and Orchatz and Karpas is to eat the vegetable, but we don't say anything about the bracha, right? The bracha, we make a Bar Pri Adama before we eat the Karpas. But we don't say that. On the other hand, Moiti Matzah, we say Moiti. Moiti refers to the bracha. So, you see that each thing is written with precision. Why do we call this by its bracha? We say Moiti Matzah as part of the Simanim. And Karpas, we don't refer to the bracha. We just go straight to the actual eating of the fruit. The fruit is called Karpas. So, obviously, according to this, the reason would be its precision. Karpas is because Karpas is the mitzvah. Karpas is the goal that we're trying to focus on. The bracha of Bar Pri Adama, that is something you have to make a bracha before you eat. That's just, you have to make it because you're not allowed to eat anything without making a bracha. It's also to have hana, to have any benefit from this world, without making a bracha. But the bracha itself is not an intrinsic part of the Seder. So therefore, that's why it's not part of the simanim. On the other hand, Moiti Matzah, it appears that is part of the intrinsic order and the Seder that we have this night. And therefore a person has to try to think about this a little when they're preparing, and as they start their Suda and they start the Seder, you have to think about this, and you have to say these words. And the Yisod V'Shorish Avodah says you're supposed to say these words, and you have to think a little bit about it. You should try at least. And the truth is, the whole Seder, a person should try and focus on what is the mitzvah. So the mitzvah, the Rambam says, is when you start from the words Arami Oived Avi. That's where the mitzvah starts. If you get caught up on all these different insights on the Holachmanya and Keholachmanya and what does it mean, all these things, why do we invite the guests in after Kiddush? And right, you can ask, why do we say Holachmanya? We already made Kiddush. Why didn't we take them before? This, you can't get caught up in the insights of the nitty-gritty. You have to focus on what the mitzvah of the night is. The mitzvah of the night is to speak about Mitzrayim, the leaving of Mitzrayim, and to actually feel like we left Mitzrayim. And that's why a person has to be focused and prepare before he does the mitzvah. The mitzvah starts Arami Oived Avi. When we say how we were slaves in Egypt, and we start off, the Gemara says it's called starting off with the negative, with the genus, the downside, how we were slaves, and then you lead it up to the good part, how we got out of Egypt. That is the essence of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. That's the mitzvah of the night. If a person misses that and they take a half hour or an hour to do the whole Kiddush and the Holachmanya and the Karpas, and then they get up to Arami Oived Avi and they say, okay, let's do Arami Avi quick, and you start zooming through Arami Oived Avi till the next part. So then you miss the main part. The main part is to focus on the Sipur, on the actual story of starting off with the Genus, with the downside of when we were in Egypt, and then we go to the positive, how we got out. So therefore all this needs forethought, that a person has to remember and think about what exactly is he trying to do. That all this is, the Haggadah is holy, and it was made up on holy, every word in it is with forethought, exactly which simon should come when. Why is Kaddish is first, and then Orchatz? So I saw brought down by two different people. The one is the Ger Rebbe, and also I saw brought down that the Ger Rebbe is a little bit Hasidish, but I also saw by Rabbi Friedlander that also Kaddish is first and Orchatz is second. Orchatz usually is we wash our hands. Now usually the Orchatz is should be first before the Kedusha. Kaddish represents holiness. First we should really do Orchatz. We should wash our hands, and then we should go to do Kaddish. Then we should try to get to that holy level. And we find this also in Mesilas Yesharim. The Mesilas Yesharim says, what's first? First you have to go Nikios, to be clean, Tara, and then once you get to Kedusha, Kedusha is high up on the ladder. But they say that on this night of Pesach, you could jump. Hashem gives us a special gift that we're able to jump. This night is it's called Zman Cheruseinu. And they ask the question, why is it called Zman Cheruseinu? It's the time that we left. It should really be the time that, not the time that we left, but it should be the night that we commemorate the time that we left. Why is it Zman Cheruseinu? If I were writing it, I would say it maybe differently. Why don't you write it, maybe you should say the Zman that we, I don't know if you call it a Zman. Maybe you should say, what would be a good nusach to say, Vatitin lanu es yom chag hamatzos hazeh, and you say, Zman sheyotza lecherus, that we went out to cherus. But why is it present? We're saying that's present day, that we are now, it's the time of freedom. Right now is the time of freedom. It should have said it's the time that we went out to freedom. We're already out, now we're free. Now is not the time of freedom. Now we're already free. So what Reb Dessler says that you're right, we are free now, but there is an idea that the time of year is not just a one. It wasn't just then that we had these Man Cheruseinu, that the time of freedom. Rather, there are certain times of the year which are intrinsic in that time, in a certain holiness which comes with that time. For example, Shabbos. Every Shabbos there's a special holiness that's in the Shabbos. And he says that we think that time is passing by. Like we're here, and time is rushing along. Time is going by. So he says that's not how to read it. That's not how to look at it. Really, what happens is we are going through time. Time is not passing through us. over us, by us. Time is passing by. No, time is not passing by. We are going through time. And every seventh day we're coming to the day of when Hashem made creation. The seventh day, it says Hashem rested. And Hashem made a Shabbos. And He put special holiness into it. By Varech Elikim, as Yom HaShvi, He was blessed that seventh day. By Kaddish Yisai, and He made it holy. And He made that day called the Shabbos. Special holiness, special blessing in it. Says Reb Dessler, every seventh day we come across that holy day. And every Pesach we come back to that holy day. So he says on Pesach we come back to the Zman of freedom. He says, imagine you're on a bus. And you're going on the bus and you have to go, let's say in Yerushalayim, you take or let's say over here, you get on the bus and you have to get off at a certain stop. So what you do is, you have to make sure you get off at your stop. Now, what happens is the bus keeps on going, then when it gets to the end of the route, it starts again. Is that true? I don't know how they work it here. But in Yerushalayim, they start the route again, they just go around. So, imagine one time, someone, he fell asleep and he missed his stop. And he slept for an hour. Then he woke up, and he was right by his stop. He got off. He was thinking, what happened there? I just slept for an hour. I missed my stop by a long shot. How am I right in front of my house? So the answer is, obviously, that he missed it, but it went all around the whole route, and now he's back around at the stop where he has to get off. So therefore, Reb Dessler says that's what it is with every Yom Tov and with Shabbos. What it is that it's like a ma'agal. Ma'agal is like a circle, a cycle, that we all go around through the year, and there are different times of the year which have special holiness in them. And that holiness is there forever. The Zman of Shavuos, they say, is the time of the Matan Torah. Yes?
So Shabbat isn't coming. We're going towards Shabbat.
Right. And every seventh day we go into another Shabbos. Into that same holiness that was put in there on the seventh day of creation, we are entering into a new Shabbos. And when we come to Shavuos, we're entering into the time of the giving of the Torah, that time. And that's why we actually have to accept on ourselves the yoke of Torah. They say that we're supposed to say that, accept the yoke of Torah on our shoulders. And there's an interesting thing that they say that a person shouldn't, there's such a thing they used to do, of bloodletting in the olden times. It was a medical procedure that they used to do, and they would let out blood and that would help them feel better. So it says that Erev Shavuos, the day before Shavuos, you have to be careful not to do bloodlettings. You shouldn't do this because it's also a little dangerous. It's like a surgery. So they say, the Mishnah Berurah says, even today, Erev Shavuos, you shouldn't do this medical procedure, surgery, bloodletting, because it's a dangerous day. Because there is a demon that's out on the loose on Erev Shavuos. What's the name of the demon? The name of the demon is Tavuach. Tavuach. Tavuach means to slaughter. What does it mean? Because this demon was out on the loose, because if the Jews would not have accepted the Torah, then Hashem would have let this demon just kill everyone, because if we don't accept the Torah, then or this demon was out on the loose, Erev Shavuos, and it was given the license that it was on hold. Depending if we'll accept the Torah or not, the demon was therefore waiting, and if we accept the Torah, then Hashem will not give the demon the license to hurt anyone. But if we wouldn't accept the Torah, then it would have been dangerous. Therefore, Erev Shavuos, the day before Shavuos, you can't do any dangerous procedures. So the Mishnah Berurah says, it's also even today, even Erev Shavuos this year and next year, you can't do this dangerous procedure. So the question is why? We already accepted the Torah. Why? What's the problem now? Right? Everything's good. The Jews said we'll accept the Torah. So the answer is brought that you're right. That was in that generation, but each generation and each year we have to accept it on us again, the Torah, because it's Zman of giving of the Torah every year. And every year, the day before Shavuos, the shade, the demon, whose name is Tavuach, comes out again. And you have to be careful to make sure you accept the yoke of Torah each year. Because it's not just a zich, it's not a reenactment or a remembrance that we do Shavuos. Shavuos is actually the day when we accept the Torah. It's the time of Matan Torah Seinu, when we are given the Torah each year. And therefore Pesach is Man Cheru Seinu, the year, it's the day and the special time when we actually went free. And that day, that time has a special element in it of Cherus, of freedom, which we're able to tune into, and we're able to tap into and take out certain powers for ourselves, which we could jump to them and take for them the whole year. But you have to realize what they are. This Man Cherusenu of freedom. Maybe it means, they speak out, freedom of the soul, that a person could actually be independent and make decisions that even though the society will tell him not to, or different things are pushing him, his evil inclination is pushing him to say certain things or to do certain things. So now he has the freedom of everything is on his own. He's able to now just decide and make the right decisions. That's also an idea of cherus, of freedom, that we get on Pesach.
Sorry, question. Who authored the Haggadah that we go through this time, and that we come to it, supposed to pass it out?
Well, the Haggadah is one mitzvah of Pesach. Pesach has a few mitzvahs that we have, right? We have the whole idea, besides from matzah, and we have maror, and we also have the whole idea of the Zman. This is the Zman Cherusenu, which we spoke out a little bit. That Zman Cherusenu, we became a nation. This is. We'll have to look at the Kiddush. You have to prepare the Kiddush. You have to see the special significance of this Kiddush, of the Friday, of this the first night of Pesach. It's not just a regular Kiddush like every night, right? So, just on your question, we'd have to look up who the author is. It's not so clear. It seems to be a compilation of a lot of different psukim and midrashim, but that's just a compilation for that. But in terms of the time is a time of freedom, and we became free. And what came with that freedom was that we became also to the next step. We became the Jewish nation, and we accepted on ourselves the Torah, and we rose to the level of being Mamlechas Koyanim V'Goy Kadosh. We became a holy nation of kingdom, a kingdom of priests, and Goy Kadosh, and a nation which is holy. So we are actually like priests. We're doing the service of Hashem, and that's why we do all these things, because we actually became kings. It's an interesting idea that the Chinuch says. It's not just what happened then, that we then went out of Mitzrayim. We have to feel like a king on Pesach night. We have to feel like we're actually, it's not just because we went out of bondage, but it's even deeper. We have to feel that we actually became a kingdom of priests. Mamlechas Koyanim, a kingdom of priests, and just like a big king, he won't eat leftovers, right? He doesn't leave over. He takes, and he doesn't take anything to go. So too, we're not supposed to leave over from the Karban Pesach anything, and we're supposed to lean while we drink, and we're supposed to drink good wine. All this is supposed to feel like a king, because this night we actually became free, and we also went to that next level of being a Jew who is actually a servant of Hashem. And it's a beautiful thing. In the Kiddush we say, Asher Bachar Banu Mikolam. Hashem chose us from all the nations. So that's the first idea, that we were chosen. And Mimanu Mikol Ashad, He actually raised us up over every other language that there is. He rose us up. And He says, V'kidashtan b'mitzvaysav, and He gave us the holiness of the mitzvahs. So therefore a person has to think through these three things. These three things, not just we went out of Egypt, right? A person goes through the whole Pesach and just thinks, went out of Egypt, okay, that was great, fine. I was never in Egypt in the first place. So what does that have to do with me? Okay, fine, if you tell me to, I'll feel like a king. Then he's not getting the idea of the mitzvah of the night. The idea has to be that we became free, and freedom of the soul. We actually became Mamlechas Koyanim. We actually accepted on ourselves. We became the chosen nation, and the chosen nation includes in that being the servants of Hashem, which are the priests, the kingdom of priests. It's a kingdom, and we were chosen to be Hashem's chosen nation with a beautiful mitzvahs, which has holiness in them. So that's Kiddush Tanu, we have holiness, and Raimamanu, He raised us up. Yes?
How are you supposed to reenact that transition?
So the Chinuch is saying that all the mitzvahs, he goes through 6 mitzvahs, and those 6, 7, 8 mitzvahs are all to help you feel that you're a king. Well, why do you have to? It's a question people don't understand. Why do you have to feel like a king? I have to lean. Why do I have to lean? Well, I have to lean because the king is lean. And I have to drink wine because a cup of wine because I have to feel like I'm free, or I can't leave over from the Korban Pesach, or I can't take it out because the way of kings is they don't take food and show it to their friends. A poor person, he comes to he sees a big meal. He's astounded. So he sees this big meat and he takes some and he goes out to show his friends. But a king, he's not daunted by such things. So that's the idea, that we can't leave over from the Korban Pesach, and we have to lean. And he goes through a lot of different mitzvahs, which a person, he calls it Adam Nifal Kefi Poloisav. Right? Adam, a person, is moved and he is affected by his actions. And if you do these actions, right, go through all these mitzvahs of the night, you will be affected and you will become to feel like a king. That's just the idea.
You'll feel like you were enslaved and then you went into the
Mamlacha. So that's on one level, the fact that we were enslaved. That is true. You have to feel like you went out of Egypt. That's one idea that the Rambam says. A person has to feel like Chayiv Adam Lerois Esatzmai or Laharois. He has to show himself, or he has to feel like he left Egypt. But on the other hand, the Chinuch says another idea, that we became, he says, we're leaning and we're doing all the business because we became not only free, but we became a kingdom of priests. And we are the actually princes of Hashem. We are the princes of Hashem. That's what the Chinuch says, this idea. And therefore we took it to the next level, and we have to act like that. And realize it's not just freedom to be free from slavery, but it's freedom to be princes of Hashem. And that's what we say here. So you have to concentrate when you say Kiddush on the Seder night. The Kiddush is, He chose us from all nations, Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'am, V'roim Imanu, and He raised us, Mikol Hashem, V'kidashtanu b'mitzvah. We are actually, this night, it happened. The person has to think a lot that this is a holy night. This is Zman Cheruseinu. This is the time of freedom. And it's not just then, but this night is the night that we became the first step towards being the holy nation and the princes, the nation of princes. So it's all on this night, and it can happen. The person should try to get out of that night and try to take out of that the feeling of elevation. Roim Manu, we were elevated. Mikol Hashem. It's an elevation, and a person has to realize he's not like a Jew and a non-Jew is not just like two people, but one of them has more commandments. No, he has to realize Roim Manu, we are elevated. We are princes. We are Hashem's princes. Goy Mamleches Koyanim. We are the kingdom of priests, and therefore that's why he says we have to do all these mitzvahs, because all what we spoke about another mitzvah also.
The bone.
That's why a person cannot chew a bone. You can't break a bone. It says ve'etzem lo yisishberu v'ay. You can't break the Korban Pesach, break the bone while a person's eating it. Why can't you break the bone on eating the Korban Pesach?
Just during Pesach or
on Pesach?
Not for Malachim.
Because you ever see a king chew on a bone? You ever see him bite the bone and try to get a little marrow out of it? I've seen some people do it, but it's not the way of a king. A king doesn't do it. He has the meat, and the bone he leaves for the dogs. The way of the dogs is they eat the bone. And the Chinuch speaks all this out. Right? That was one idea, right? And you shouldn't leave over. Any other mitzvahs that we spoke out?
You already said, like the leaning.
Right. Okay. So all these mitzvahs is a person should imbue in himself and ingrain in himself that we became holy. Right. They say that there's different levels out in the world. Right. There's rocks. Right. The rocks are like there's domaim. Domaim is inanimate. They can't move. They have no life. Right. Then there is tomeach. Right. Domaim is the first. They don't move. They can't. They're rocks. Tomeach, things that grow. Grass. That's the next level of life. They grow. Then next is Animals. It's called chai, live. They could move. They could fend for themselves. So that's one. Next, third level. After that is medaber. is humans. Humans could even talk, besides for being chai, besides for being alive. They could talk. And everyone, all of our great Torah leaders say, besides, after you got Medaber, you have Klal Yisrael. That's the highest level, which is, although we could talk also, but we're even on a higher level. We're Hashem's chosen nation, and we are princes. We're a nation of princes, and therefore a person has to feel this way. And you have to lean, you have to enjoy it, and you have to have your best. I'll tell you another example. You're supposed to take out all your silver, provided it's clean and everything. You're supposed to put even whatever you have from the silver on your table. And they say the Maharil, he even had certain utensils, silver, which he had as a mashkin. A mashkin in English is a collateral that someone gave him because he lent him a lot of money. So he was holding it. He would take that out and put it on his table also, because you have to show and feel like you're actually this nation of princes. So therefore, that's the work. A person has to think about it when he says Kiddush. Kiddush is going to be the time to start off the night. That you're supposed to think this night is like no other night. They speak about this night. This is even more special than Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach would say that this night has excellent qualities. That is very special, more than any other night of the year. And the reason is because of these things, that we became the holy nation today. Today we left Mitzrayim, and today we went to that next level on our way to accepting the Torah and becoming Hashem's chosen nation. Mamlechas Koyanim, a holy nation, a kingdom of priests, and a Goy Kaddish, and a holy nation. Yes, what was the question?
It's okay.
Yeah, okay, so that's the idea. A person has to realize that time is not passing by, we are passing through time. And as we get to Pesach, we're going to be going into that period of time called freedom, and we're going to become free, and we could use it to try to jump, and that's the time where we could jump to the next level, and we could Kadesh Orchatz. Usually it's Orchatz Kadesh. Usually you wash your hands first, and then you're holy, right? Then you're clean. Then you could jump to holiness. But on this night, we're able to jump just like the Jews went out of Egypt. They went out of Egypt, they were down, on the number 49 level negative of impurity. They were down. If they would have gone one more level, they say they couldn't have gotten out. And they got out, and they went out, and then they just went. They went to that level of being on the highest level, and they got the Torah, and they became the Jewish nation. So you see from here that this night is a special night. You could even jump to the higher level, to jump to. It's called an awakening from Hashem. Hashem gives us a present on this night, and a Jew could leap to many levels, jump levels where he wouldn't be able to get to on a regular, ordinary night. Yes?
We don't put tefillin on
right.
Pesach.
Right. We don't put tefillin on Pesach, right?
This conversation just brings me to the thought of putting on tefillin, bondage and a crown. It's not so relevant to Pesach.
Interesting.
It's just on my mind.
It's an interesting idea. We'd have to think about that idea, if it would be that. But they don't. I never heard that before. Although you do mind it, I don't know if it refers to the bondage. But it's a nice thought. At least you're thinking about tefillin. One step. The first step is you have to think about what you're doing. Very good. So that's what we have to do. We have to start thinking about this, and this is Kiddush. This will be the first thing we have to think about as we say all of these simanim, all of these, what you call, Kaddish Orchatz, all these, in English, the simanim would be just the order, the Seder. There's a Seder, it's called the Seder. There's an order, everything is in order, and it's all holy. And a person has to try to take out from this night, and we'll say Kiddush, we end off the words of Kiddush, Baruch atah Hashem mekadesh Yisrael v'hazmanim. So, although there's different explanations, but this explanation would be mekadesh Yisrael, Hashem gave kedusha, gave holiness to the Jews, v'hazmanim, and to the time. This time is the time of Pesach. This time is holy, and therefore we're thanking Hashem for those two things, and we're trying to get it into ourselves, try to raise ourselves to the next level, and then we will be at the next level for the rest of the year. We can take this with us for the whole year. Yes?
How did God give us the holiness? Is that through the Mitzvah and through the Torah?
Right. Yes. Yes. He gave it to us with. Yes. He gave us the. He gave us. We are actually capable of accepting all this holiness, but it's through the mitzvahs. V'kidashtanu, v'kidashanu b'mitzvahs. He gave us the holiness through the mitzvahs, and He gave us this holiness every time a person does a mitzvah. He gets more holy. It's an interesting thing they bring down, that there is holiness. The holiness is each time a person guards himself and he does a mitzvah, or not, he doesn't do an avera, he gets a certain more level of holiness. And therefore a person has to take with himself these words, that this is simcha and sasan. He has to be happy and rejoice. And we say this in Kiddush, that the simcha v'sasan hin chaltanu, that He gave it to us with simcha and sasan. What's the difference between these two things? Right? You say that Hashem gave us the Yom Tif, the simcha v'sasan with people translate it as happiness and joy. But what's the idea? So the idea is that we say, when you find a treasure, so there's right when you find it, there's the joy. There's a special joy. Now we won't explain exactly. There are different explanations, but I just want to bring out the last thing, that a person has to be in joy with the Torah and mitzvahs like he just got it. And if a person, they bring a story with Rav Shalom that he actually one time got $5,000 from someone for a certain thing. So he had $5,000 in his pocket, and he kept on touching his pocket to make sure it was here. If you ever had this, I one time had also, someone asked me to take a lot of money to somewhere. So you keep on checking your pocket, and he couldn't believe that he had so much money on him. And then after a few days, he got used to it, and he wasn't. It didn't make him feel any better, and he realized it was wearing off. So he said, that's what we have to do. We have to make sure this never wears off, this happiness of appreciating who we are and trying to reach for the next level of becoming holier and more free and being a true kingdom of priests. That person has to never let it wear off. He has to be has to be full of joy. As David HaMelech said, Sas anochi alim rosecha. I am joyous over your words, like I found a treasure.